Kayla tells her story saying, "My name's Kayla. I'm 26. I live in Wichita. I've been a vet tech at Blue Sky Animal Hospital off Rock Road for almost 4 years now. I make 19 an hour, which sounds fine, until you remember I'm also carrying around like 11 grand in student loans from a 2-year vet tech program that honestly did not need to cost that much. I've got red hair that's not really red anymore, more like a faded orange with like 2 inches of dark roots, because I haven't had time or money to redo it. A septum ring and a little paw print tattoo on my wrist for my first dog Biscuit, who passed a couple years ago. And I currently have a golden retriever named Nugget, who is honestly the best coworker I've ever had because he comes with me on jobs and just lays there being calm while I groom anxious dogs, like he's basically a certified good vibes machine. Okay, so background, because you need to understand who Danielle is before any of this makes sense. Danielle is my cousin. She's 34. She's my mom's sister's daughter, so she's not like a distant cousin. She practically grew up in the same house as me half the time because her mom, my Aunt Pam, worked doubles a lot. And Danielle would just be at our place after school starting when she was like 11 and I was 3. So she's basically always felt like an older sister to me, not a cousin. And that's important because that's exactly why none of my alarm bells went off the way they should have. Because when you've known someone since before you could form memories, you just don't run background checks on their character, you know. She's a hairstylist, works at a salon in Darby called Sheer Perfection. Has for like 12 years. She's good at it, honestly, does balayage. Has a whole clientele that follows her from job to job. She's married to Colton. They've got a daughter named Presley, who's 6. And Colton worked at Spirit Aerosystems. If you're not from Wichita, that's basically the biggest employer in this city besides the school district. They make airplane fuselage parts. Half of everyone's dad or uncle or cousin works there. And Colton got laid off in the big round of layoffs back in early 2024. I think it was like 900 people got cut that spring. It was all over the local news. And that's genuinely relevant because that's when things started for real. So my grandma Loretta, she passed away in January 2024, breast cancer. She fought it for like 2 years. And honestly, the last few months were rough. I used to go sit with her on my days off and just watch Wheel of Fortune with her because that was her show. She never missed it. She'd yell at the contestants like they could hear her. She left a small life insurance policy that got split 5 ways between the grandkids. So I got $6,200, which genuinely felt like the most money I'd ever had at one time in my entire life. And around the same time, I had this side thing going. Because before I became a vet tech, I worked weekends at the PetSmart grooming salon for like 3 years doing dog baths and basic cuts. And I'd built up this little bit of a following of people who wanted me to groom their dogs outside of PetSmart because it's cheaper and less corporate. And I was doing it out of my apartment parking lot with a kiddie pool and a handheld dryer, which is insane looking back. and I'd saved up almost 16 grand from tips and side jobs over those years, because I don't really go out much, and I don't buy clothes or anything. I'm pretty much a hoodie and leggings person. So between the grandma money and my savings, I had right around $22,000. And I'd been dreaming for actual years about getting a real mobile grooming van, like the ones you see with the big wrap on the side, so I could drive to people's houses and do it properly with a real tub and dryer setup instead of a kiddie pool in a parking lot in July, sweating my life away. And Danielle, when she found out I had this money and this plan, she got so excited, like genuinely more excited than I was. She was like, "Kayla, oh my God, I can literally run all the business side for you. I've been wanting to get out of doing hair full time anyway. My back is so bad from standing all day." And I was like, that would be amazing, honestly, because I am not a numbers person. I'm the girl who still does math on her fingers under the table. And Danielle went to community college for 2 years for business admin before she dropped out to have Presley. So in my head, she was basically qualified. She talked the talk. She used words like overhead and quarterly and client acquisition cost. And I was just nodding along like, yeah, that exactly, you get it. So April 2024, I bought a used 2015 Ford Transit Connect for $9,800 from a guy off Facebook Marketplace in Andover. Put another $6,400 into equipment, a proper hydraulic tub, an Andes clipper set, a KURA pet cage dryer, a little generator, vinyl wrap for the side that says Wichita Wags Mobile Grooming with a cartoon dog paw. And Danielle handled setting up the LLC and the business bank account at Community State Bank. And I paid like $900 total for the LLC filing and insurance. And she said, "Don't worry about logins and passwords. I'll set up a shared dashboard. It's way less confusing if just one person handles the actual account stuff. Too many hands in the pot causes mistakes." And I was like, okay, that makes sense. And honestly, in the moment, it felt like a relief, because I already work 40 plus hours at the clinic and do the grooming jobs on my days off and weekends. So having someone handle the invoicing and scheduling app and the social media felt like a gift. We agreed she'd take $750 a month as like a set fee for handling all the admin stuff, which felt fair to me. That's basically part-time work. And for the first few months, not gonna lie, it did feel good. She'd send me these little PDF reports at the end of the month with pie charts, actual pie charts, showing income versus expenses. And it looked professional. It looked like we were building something real. Business picked up fast, honestly. Wichita didn't really have a mobile groomer at the time. Closest thing was a company out of Andover that charged like $40 more per visit. So I was booking 4 to 5 dogs a day some weeks, charging between $65 and $95, depending on size and coat. And I genuinely thought I was gonna be able to quit the clinic within like 2 years. Okay, so this is where I need to back up for a second, because there's a detail that matters a lot. around month 12. So this would have been like April 2025. We were at my Aunt Pam's for Easter. And Aunt Pam, who does not have a filter ever, was going on about how Danielle finally got her Kia Telluride paid off. Isn't that wonderful? She said her business bonus this year was so generous. And I remember standing there holding a plate of deviled eggs thinking, what bonus? There's no bonus structure. We don't have money for bonuses. We're barely profitable because I keep sinking money back into supplies. And the van needed brake work in February that cost like $600. But I just brushed it off. I told myself maybe Aunt Pam misunderstood, or maybe Danielle meant like a tax refund. And Pam was just exaggerating like she does about everything. Remember, she once told the whole family my mom won a car, and it turned out it was a $25 gas station scratch-off. So I let it go. That's on me. I know that now. I had a whole little itch in the back of my head, and I ignored it because confronting Danielle about anything felt insane to me. Like accusing your own sister, basically. She used to braid my hair before school when my mom worked early shifts at Cessna. She came to every single one of my birthday parties, even as an adult. She cried at my vet tech graduation harder than my own mom did. So spoiler, because I know this is already dragging, and you're probably wondering when the actual bad part happens. It gets so much worse. But let me finish getting through the timeline. First, because the order matters for how blindsided I actually was. Fast forward to around August 2025. Business is still going. I'm now up to about 6 regular weekly clients, plus one-off bookings through the app. Revenue for the year at that point, Danielle reported, was somewhere around 24 grand gross, which tracked with what I was mentally estimating based on how many dogs I was doing. So nothing seemed off on paper. Then September rolls around, and I get this email out of nowhere from the leasing company for the cage dryer, because I'd financed part of that equipment through a business lease, $178 a month, and the email says the automatic payment was declined due to insufficient funds. And I remember reading it standing in the break room at the clinic eating a granola bar and thinking that has to be a glitch, because according to Danielle's last report, the business account had like $800 sitting in it as a cushion. So I texted her, just casual, like, hey, did you see this email about the dryer lease bouncing? That's weird, right? And she took like 4 hours to respond, which was unusual for her, because normally she's the type who responds to texts within minutes, even at like 11 at night. And when she finally texted back, she said, OMG, so weird, let me look into it. Probably a bank error. I'll call them tomorrow. Don't stress, bestie. And she does this thing. By the way, this is such a Danielle thing. She's 34 years old, and she calls me bestie. And says, no cap. And it's giving like she's trying to be Presley's age instead of mine. And it always felt kind of funny and endearing before. But in this moment, it just felt weird, like she was performing something instead of actually being present. So I waited a couple days, nothing. I texted again. She said she was handling it. And finally, I got annoyed enough that I decided I was just gonna call the bank myself. Because at the end of the day, my name is on this LLC too. I'm not just some silent partner. I put my entire life savings and my dead grandma's insurance money into this thing. So I called Community State Bank, sat on hold for like 25 minutes listening to this awful hold music that was just a saxophone loop. And the woman who finally answered pulled up the account and told me I was listed as an authorized signer. And she asked if I wanted the statements resent to my email, because apparently the account had been set to send all statement notifications to an email address ending in reyesbookkeeping@gmail, which is not my email, obviously. That's Danielle's married name, Reyes. And she was like, would you like a physical statement mailed to your address instead? And I said yes, please, immediately. And she said it could take up to 2 weeks because of some processing thing. And those 2 weeks were honestly some of the most anxious 2 weeks of my whole year. Because in the meantime, I had to personally cover the dryer lease payment out of my own checking account. And I started paying closer attention to little things, like Danielle suddenly being kind of short with me in texts. Like when I asked if we could hop on a call to go over the year-end numbers. Early, she kept saying she was swamped with Presley's soccer stuff, or dealing with a client emergency at the salon. And I remember thinking, since when do you have client emergencies? You do hair. And feeling immediately guilty for thinking that because it sounded mean in my head. So the statement finally comes in the mail. It's a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays are my long clinic days, 12-hour shift. I get home around 8:30. Emily's already made dinner, spaghetti. And I just sat down at our kitchen table, still in my scrub top. Didn't even change. And I opened this envelope with my hands actually shaking a little. And I started going line by line with a pink highlighter I had left over from vet tech school. Nugget just laying under the table with his head on my foot, like he could tell something was wrong. And okay, this is where it gets really specific, so bear with me. The account should have had, based on the revenue I knew we'd brought in and the expenses I knew about, somewhere around 8 to 10 grand in it easy. We'd had a genuinely good year. Instead, the account was sitting at negative $412. Negative. And when I started tracing back the withdrawals, I found this pattern of transfers. Sometimes 200, sometimes 350, once even 600 in a single transfer, going out to something labeled D-REYES personal transfer, almost every single week, way more often than the agreed 750 a month. I counted it up later, that whole night, with a calculator app and a legal pad, and it came out to $29,650 withdrawn to her personal accounts, and cash over about 16 months, when she was only ever supposed to be taking $750 monthly, which over that time period is $12,000. So that's already a gap of over $17,000 just in the stuff labeled as her own transfers, not even counting other charges. And then I saw them, 3 separate charges to Kansas Star Casino, MULVANEKs, one for $40, one for $175, one for $300, all run on the business debit card, which she had because she needed it for supplies runs. And there were also 2 declined attempts to something called DRAFTKINGS Sportsbook that had been flagged and blocked by the bank's fraud system, which honestly probably saved me a little bit of extra pain. I sat there and I just started crying. Not even loud crying, just this weird silent leaking where I wasn't even sobbing. I was just staring at this piece of paper with numbers on it that represented my grandma's death and 3 years of me smelling like wet dog and standing outside in Kansas heat doing tick checks for tips. And Emily came in because she heard me sniffling, and she looked at the statement over my shoulder and just went, "Kayla, what the fuck?" And I remember laughing, this awful laugh, because that was exactly the right response. And it was also useless. Like, yeah, what the fuck? That's the whole situation summarized. I didn't call Danielle that night. I actually didn't say anything to her for like 4 days, which, if you know me, is out of character because I am historically the worst confrontation avoider on planet Earth. I once let a DoorDash guy keep my food because I felt too awkward to tell him he had the wrong order. But this felt different. I needed to actually plan what I was going to say because I knew she was going to try to spin it. She's really good at spinning things. Always has been. Like growing up, she once convinced my mom that I'd been the one who scratched her car with a bike when it was actually her. And my mom believed her over me for like a week. So I made a folder. I printed out the whole statement, highlighted everything in pink, wrote out a comparison sheet showing the agreed amount versus actual withdrawn amount. And I decided I was gonna bring it to Memorial Day, which was already planned to be at Aunt Pam's house in Darby, like every year. Whole family, potato salad, somebody's Bluetooth speaker, playing Zach Bryan on repeat. Because that's just what happens at every single family function in this state now. And I figured at least there'd be witnesses. Not that I wanted a scene. I actually really didn't want a scene. But I think part of me knew if I did this one-on-one, she'd just cry and apologize and manipulate her way out of it, the way she always had with smaller stuff growing up. Like the time she borrowed $200 from me in 2021 for a car repair and never paid it back. And somehow, by the end of that conversation, I was the one apologizing for bringing it up. So Memorial Day comes. It's hot, like 91 degrees. I'm wearing this old blue sky animal hospital scrub top even though I'm off. Because honestly, half my closet is just scrub tops at this point. They're comfortable and free. And I've got the folder in a tote bag sitting in my car because I chickened out about even bringing it inside at first. Everybody's out back. Presley's running around with a water gun. Colton's at the grill in the Spirit Aerosystems hoodie he still wears even though he doesn't work there anymore, which I remember thinking was a weirdly specific detail to notice, but I did. And Danielle's sitting in a lawn chair, scrolling her phone with a white claw in the cup holder. And I go grab the folder from my car, and I walk up to her by the cooler where she'd gone to get another drink. And I just said, real quiet at first, "Hey, can we talk for a sec?" And she goes, "Yeah, of course, bestie, what's up?" all sing-songy. And I opened the folder, and I just held it out and said, "Why does the account say negative $400 when there should be almost $9,000 in it?" And her face did this thing, this specific thing where her mouth kind of froze into a half smile, but her eyes went completely flat, like she was doing math really fast behind her eyes. And she said, "Okay, well, first of all, can we not do this here?" And I said, "We've been doing this everywhere except here for like 2 weeks because you keep avoiding my calls." And she goes, "I have not been avoiding you. I've been so busy. You don't understand how much I've had going on." And I said, "I don't care what's going on, Danielle. There's $17,000 missing that's not accounted for by your salary. And there's casino charges on my business card." And that's when her voice went up, not quite yelling, but close. "Okay, first of all, it's OUR business card. And second of all, you have no idea what me and Colton have been dealing with since he lost his job. Do you know what that's done to us financially? Do you know how humiliating that's been for him?" And I said, and I remember this exact sentence because I practiced it in my car earlier. I said, "I'm sorry about Colton's job. Genuinely. That has nothing to do with you stealing from me." And that's when Colton actually came over from the grill, spatula still in his hand. And he goes, "Whoa, whoa, nobody's stealing anything. Don't talk to my wife like that." And I said, "She withdrew almost $30,000 from an account with my dead grandmother's inheritance money in it. What do you want me to call it?" And Danielle started full on crying at this point, the kind of crying where it gets loud fast. And she goes, "I was going to pay it back. I was gonna pay every single cent back. I just had a really bad stretch. Colton lost his job, and we almost lost the house, and I panicked. I started using the DraftKings app because everybody makes it look so easy, and I thought I could win back what we needed, and then it spiraled. And I know that's not an excuse. But Kayla, I raised you. I basically raised you when your mom worked doubles. How could you do this to me in front of everybody?" And I swear to God, I almost apologized in that moment. That's how good she is. I felt this genuine wave of guilt wash over me before I caught myself and realized, wait, what am I apologizing for? And Aunt Pam had come over by now, and my mom too. And Aunt Pam was crying, saying, "Can we please not do this on Memorial Day, please, for your grandma?" Using grandma, my actual grandma, whose money got stolen, as the reason I should shut up about it. And Presley had stopped playing with the water gun and was standing there watching her mom cry. And Colton said, real low, like trying to be the reasonable one, "Look, we're all family here. Let's just calm down. Danielle's been under a lot of stress. We can figure out a payment plan or something later. This isn't the time." And I remember looking around at everybody, my mom included, who just kept saying, "Let's go inside. Let's go inside." Not even really taking a side, just wanting the discomfort to end. And I felt so incredibly alone in that backyard, even though I was surrounded by my entire family. And I just grabbed my folder and walked to my car and drove home crying so hard I had to pull over on Rock Road for like 10 minutes because I couldn't see straight. Okay, so after that, things got messy in a slow, drawn-out way instead of one big explosion, which honestly might have been worse, because at least an explosion ends. Danielle texted me that night, a wall of text, said she was so sorry, said she'd been struggling with gambling for almost 2 years actually, longer than I knew. Said it started small with sports betting apps, just for fun with Colton, and then became something she couldn't stop even when she wanted to. Said she used the business card because it was just sitting there, and she told herself she'd put it back before I noticed. And every message ended with something like, "I love you so much, and I hate myself for this," with a crying emoji. And I did not respond that night. I just stared at it. The next week, she texted saying her and Colton talked, and they wanted to set up a real payment plan. She offered to pay me back $9,400 total, which is honestly not even close to the full amount I calculated. But I think she was hoping I'd take it because it sounded like a big number, and I'd feel like justice was served. And I was so exhausted at that point, emotionally, financially. I'd already had to put $1,200 on a credit card just to cover the equipment lease payments and keep the business alive, because without that dryer, I literally cannot groom dogs. So I said fine, $9,400. We texted out an actual agreement. Nothing official, no lawyer. Just a text thread where she said, "I, Danielle Reyes, agree to pay Kayla Ostrander $9,400 back in monthly payments starting July 1st. And I screenshotted it because that's basically the only paper trail I have. She paid me $400 in July. She paid me $300 in August. She paid me $100 in September with a text saying, "So sorry, it's small this month. Presley needed new soccer cleats and money's tight." Which, imagine, telling the person you stole 30 grand from that you can't pay them back because of soccer cleats. October, she sent nothing. Said she'd catch up in November. November, she sent $50 2 days before Thanksgiving, like some kind of guilt offering. And I did not go to Thanksgiving that year. First time in my whole life, I skipped a family Thanksgiving. I told my mom I had to work a shift at the clinic, which was a lie. I actually just sat in my apartment, eating a rotisserie chicken from Dylan's by myself, with Nugget, while Emily was at her own family's thing. And it was honestly one of the loneliest nights I've had in years. But it felt better than sitting at a table with Danielle, pretending everything was normal, while Aunt Pam probably made everyone say what they're thankful for, and Danielle probably cried about her journey. I did go to Christmas because my mom basically begged me, said, "Please don't let this ruin the whole family. Your grandma would be so upset," which, again, using my dead grandma against me. And Danielle and I did not speak the entire time. We were in the same room for 4 hours and said maybe 6 words to each other total. And it was so tense that my little cousin Braylon, who's like 14, actually asked me in the kitchen, "Are you and Aunt Danielle fighting or something?" And I just said, "It's complicated, bud," and gave him a Rice Krispie treat to change the subject. Okay, so somewhere in December, I actually looked into whether I could do anything legally, because I kept seeing people online talk about how family member theft is still theft. And I called this lawyer, paid $150 for a consultation, and basically got told what I was scared I'd get told, which is that because Danielle was listed as an authorized signer and not technically an owner, and because there was no formal written contract about her compensation beyond text messages, proving criminal intent versus mismanagement would be really hard and expensive. And even if I won a civil case, the cost of pursuing it would probably eat up more than what I'd recover, especially since Danielle and Colton don't really have assets. Their house is a rental. The Kias apparently not even fully paid off despite what Aunt Pam said at Easter. That was a lie too, I guess. Or maybe it got repossessed. I honestly don't even know anymore. So the lawyer basically told me my best bet realistically was to try to get whatever I could through informal payments and move on, which felt like such a garbage answer. But I think it was honest. So that's where the money sits. Officially, she still owes me around $8,550 of the $9,400 she agreed to. She stopped sending payments completely around February of this year. The last Venmo I got from her was $75 back in December with the memo. Hope this helps a little, like a heart emoji makes it less insulting. Around January, I did something I'm honestly still a little conflicted about, because there's this Wichita Moms Facebook group that half my family is in, including Aunt Pam and my mom. It's got like 14,000 members. People post about lost dogs and school closings and garage sales. And I made a post, vague on purpose, no names, just something like PSA for anyone thinking about letting a family member manage the books for a small business you started with inheritance money. Get everything in writing. Get your own bank logins. And don't assume love means honesty. Learned this the extremely hard and extremely expensive way. And it got like 340 likes and a bunch of comments from strangers saying stuff like, "I'm so sorry this happened to you," and "family will hurt you worse than anyone else can." And within like 6 hours, my cousin Megan, who is friends with Danielle on Facebook, screenshotted it and sent it to the big family group chat asking, "Does anyone know what this is about?" And it caused this whole thing. Danielle apparently called my mom crying, asking if I was trying to ruin her reputation in the whole city. And my mom called me that night going, "Kayla, did you really have to put it on Facebook? You know, everyone's gonna figure out it's about her." And I said, "Good, maybe they should know." And my mom got quiet and just said, "I don't know why you'd want to hurt the family like this." And I hung up on her, actually hung up on my own mother, which I've genuinely never done before in my life. And I sat there afterward feeling this weird mix of satisfaction and absolute nausea. Like, yes, good, she deserves to have people know. But also, is this me being petty? Is this me being the bad guy now? I genuinely could not tell you. I go back and forth on it constantly. constantly. Some days I think I did the right thing, and other days I feel like a mean person who aired family stuff online for internet strangers' sympathy. Business-wise, I want to explain where things actually stand now because it matters. Because it's not like this is some closed chapter. I'm still living the financial consequences every single day. I run Wichita Wags completely solo now. I fired Danielle from any involvement, obviously back in June. I do all my own invoicing through an app now that I control myself. Thank you very much. I learned how to do a basic profit and loss spreadsheet from a YouTube video badly, but I do it. The van is at like 138,000 miles now, and the transmission's been making this whining noise since February that my mechanic, this guy named Dwayne off Harry Street, says is gonna need like $2,200 of work sometime soon. And I do not have $2,200 sitting around. I have about $900 saved in a fund I started specifically labeled Van OH God in my banking app, and I still owe $1,200 on the credit card I put those lease payments on, plus my actual regular life stuff. Rent's $625 a month for my half of the duplex with Emily off Kellogg near the Twin Lakes area. Car payment on my personal car is $240 a month. So I'm not drowning exactly, but I'm definitely treading water. And every single time I think about the almost 30 grand that should be in a business savings account cushioning all of this instead of me white-knuckling every unexpected expense, I get this hot feeling in my chest that's somewhere between rage and just wanting to lay on the floor and cry. I still work full-time at Blue Sky too. By the way, I didn't quit because obviously the whole plan of the mobile grooming business eventually replacing that income got set back probably 3 or 4 years by this whole thing. Funny enough, work has actually been one of the more stable parts of my life through all this. My coworker Marisol, who's a vet assistant, she's the one who's heard basically the entire saga in real time during our lunch breaks. We usually split a pizza from the place next door, and she just lets me vent while we eat. And there's this one client, this old lady named Sharon, who brings in the meanest chihuahua you've ever met, named Peanut. And Peanut bit me during all this, drew actual blood. And I remember laughing so hard afterward, like genuinely laughing, because it felt almost funny that on top of everything else going on, this stupid 4-pound dog decided to attack me. Marisol had to help me clean the bite, and she was like, "Girl, your life is unhinged right now. Even the dogs are turning on you." And honestly, that's kind of exactly how it's felt. I should also say, because it feels important and messy in the way real stuff actually is, that I still love Danielle. I know how that sounds after everything I just said. I know it makes me sound either stupid or like I don't actually mean any of my own anger. But it's true. She practically raised me. She's the one who taught me how to shave my legs when I was 12 because my mom was working. She drove 4 hours with me once to bring Biscuit to a specialty vet in Kansas City when he got sick. and nobody around here could figure out what was wrong with him. She paid for the gas that whole trip and didn't even blink about it. And I keep having these moments where I remember stuff like that. And I get so confused about how the same person can be that person, and also the person who drained my dead grandmother's insurance money into a sportsbook app. She calls me sometimes still, usually late, usually a little drunk based on how her words run together. And she cries and apologizes and says things like, "I know, I don't deserve you to pick up, but I just need you to know I think about what I did every single day. And here's the thing I really am not proud of. Sometimes I actually answer. Not always. Probably like 1 out of every 4 calls. And I just sit there and listen to her cry, and I don't say much. I don't forgive her out loud, but I don't hang up either. And afterward, I feel disgusted with myself for even answering. Like, why do I keep doing this? Why can't I just block the number and be done? And I have blocked her before. Twice, actually. Once for about 6 weeks over the summer. And both times I ended up unblocking her. Once because Presley had a dance recital, and my mom sent me a video of her performing. And I just felt this overwhelming urge to text Danielle. She did so good, like nothing had happened. And Danielle responded within literally 10 seconds, like she'd been staring at her phone waiting. And we texted for like 20 minutes about nothing. About Presley's dance teacher. About how hot it's been. Totally normal cousin texting. And then I blocked her again 2 days later because I felt sick about how easy it was to slip back into normal with her. I still check her Instagram probably 3 or 4 times a week. I'm not proud of that either. She's not private. She posts constantly. She did this whole No Spend January content series this year, which is genuinely one of the most insane things I've ever witnessed, posting reels about budgeting tips and cutting back on impulse, spending with captions like learning to control my urges 1 day at a time folded sparkles. And I sat there scrolling it with my jaw on the floor because, girl, I know exactly what your impulse spending actually was. And it wasn't Target runs. She's apparently doing better with the gambling thing. Or at least, that's what my mom tells me. Says Danielle's been going to some kind of gamblers, anonymous meeting at a church over on West Street on Tuesday nights. And part of me is happy about that, genuinely, because addiction is a real thing, and I don't want her life to fall apart, especially not for Presley's sake. That kid didn't do anything to deserve any of this. But another part of me, and this is the ugly, honest part, another part of me thinks about how she gets to go get better and get support and get people telling her she's brave for facing her struggles, while I'm the one still driving a van with a dying transmission, trying to climb out of a hole she put me in. And nobody's throwing me a parade for surviving that. Nobody's telling me I'm brave. I'm just the girl who can't let things go, according to some of my family, my mom included, on her worst days, when she's frustrated that I still won't come around Danielle at gatherings. We didn't do a big family 4th of July thing this year because of all this. First time in probably 15 years. Pam usually hosts it, but she said she just didn't have the energy, which everybody knew was code for not wanting to deal with me and Danielle being in the same yard again. And honestly, that stung more than I expected. Like, this thing didn't just cost me money. It cost the whole family this stupid tradition we've had my whole life. Fireworks in Pam's backyard. Always the same playlist. Always somebody's kid getting stung by a wasp near the cooler. And now it's just gone. And that's on Danielle. That's genuinely on her. But I also can't help feeling like some of that's on me too, for the Facebook post. For not being able to just swallow it and fake normal the way everyone else seems capable of doing. I don't really have a neat way to end this because I'm still in the middle of it. I still get Venmo notifications, sometimes, that turn out to just be some random client paying me for a grooming appointment instead of Danielle finally sending money. And every time my stomach does this little drop before I even open the notification. And I hate that my body still does that. Still hopes it might be her fixing things, even though I know rationally she's not going to. She hasn't sent a payment in 5 months. And based on the pattern I've watched for over a year now, I don't think she ever fully will. I think eventually I'm just going to have to accept that somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 of that money is just gone forever, eaten by an app on her phone that flashes green numbers and red numbers, and apparently made her feel something that being a mom and a wife and a person with an actual family who loves her couldn't give her, which is a whole other thing I try not to think about too hard because it makes me feel weirdly sad for her on top of everything. Sad in a way I don't want to feel, because feeling sad for her feels like letting her off the hook, and I'm not ready to do that. Maybe I'll never be ready to do that. Or maybe in like 2 years, I'll be sitting at some other family thing, eating potato salad next to her like none of this ever happened. Because that's honestly how my family operates. Everything eventually gets buried under enough time and enough forced togetherness. And some days, that possibility makes me so angry I want to scream. And other days, it's honestly the only ending I can picture that doesn't involve losing my whole family over a business that hasn't even turned a real profit yet. And I genuinely don't know which version of the future I actually want. I just know it's almost 3 a.m. now. Nugget just came and put his head on my knee because I think I've been crying without totally noticing. And I've got 4 dogs booked tomorrow starting at 9. So I guess this is where I stop typing and go try to sleep even, though I already know I'm gonna lay here running the Kansas Star Casino charges through my head one more time before I finally pass out.